This is the Indianness podcast, stories of success from leaders and change makers of Indian origin. Why have Indians achieved success across so many different disciplines around the globe? I have no idea, but let's find out together. Every story is unique. I'm very excited to have Amit Singh with us today. He's the Chief Business Officer of Palo Alto Networks, a leading cybersecurity company. He has also served as their president. He has served in leadership roles at Google and Oracle. I invited him on this show as I was fascinated by his journey from being at an Air Force high school in India to a leadership role for one of the leading cybersecurity companies in the world. Welcome, Amit. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Sanjay, it's so good to see you again. And yeah, being back in airport school brings back memories for sure.
Wow, we are going to take you way back there. Amit, we are trying to capture the journey to inspire others. So when you try to capture the journey, we kind of have to go right to the beginning. So Amit, can you, walk us to where were you born? Tell us a little bit about your parents, and then we'll dig more into it.
Sure. Yeah, I was born in Delhi, in the military hospital in Delhi. And my dad was in the Air Force and served there for over 30 years. And I'm the only child. And we were, in different Air Force bases all across the country, on the Pakistan border, on the China border. And for a long time, obviously I tagged along with my parents, but then went to boarding school after that, as you mentioned.
So, as a armed forces kid, you kind of have to be really adjusting. I'm not one, but I have a lot of friends. So you kind of, new friends, new environment, new school. So just tell us firstly, where all did you go? Like places like Pathankot and others. Where all did you end up?
Yeah, so I know I'll give you the full the history. It's Delhi, Kanpur, uh, uh, Halwara, in like right outside Ludhiana, Hashimara, Kalaikunda, and Bangalore, and then back to Delhi.
Wow, it's you could be for the Indian tourism, incredible India journey. So, but that is pretty fascinating. So, how was it going to new different places, Amit, in terms of schools, friends, etc.? Walk us through a
Yeah,
little bit of that.
Sanjay, it's really, I think, been one of those core things that you sort of end up doing. You don't know any better. And you have to be flexible. You have to learn how to adjust and go to a new place, pick up every 2 years, 2.5 years, and get into a new school and make new friends and learn new curriculum and meet teachers and like kind of understand what does it take to get good marks here. And, and in like the camp, because you live in a, Air Force camp, and then, there's a whole social and, sports culture there, and you go figure all that out. So I can only say that it was great, because, it made me who I am. And, you have to be sort of open to these new experiences, or else you're not going to do well. Right. And it's just you're forced into it. And my parents were social enough where they'd like make friends quickly. And there's always a club at these places, Sanjay. So there's a place to go, and they have sports facilities and stuff. So you go like, hey, I want to play squash. So you pick up a racket, get out there, and you find a partner. And then before you know it, you're friends with that partner, and you play with them the next day. And that's just how life goes. And, the school part was similar. Like, you show up nervous, first day of school in a new place. You don't know anybody. You got your uniform on, and teacher introduces you. Here's the new kid. And everybody else, like so many people were also Air Force. So that helps. But there's a lot of local people. They're like, okay, another kid. And so take some doing, but it was a time pre the internet. There wasn't distractions. There wasn't social media. So you had the playground, and you had your friends, you had books, right? And so you bond over those things. And, maybe it's like, hindsight, you sort of look at everything with rose colored glasses. But at this moment, it felt like it was a pretty amazing experience to be able to see these different cultures, be part of different things. And I enjoyed it.
So that was your normal, so to speak, right?
Sure thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you went to some people who maybe our listeners might not know. There are places in Northeast, etc., which are, have very different schooling, language, etc. Also, was that a little difficult for Amit for you?
I was in Kendriya Vidyalaya, so it was mostly Hindi and English. So yeah, so did that, and we was never in a school where it was the language wasn't my own. Now people around me spoke like in Kalaikunda they spoke Bengali, and in Hashimara they spoke Assamese, and so but I didn't understand any of those things, and we commonly spoke English or used gestures. So however it worked out. Or when we were in Sikandrabad, actually we did a stint in Sikandrabad. It was Tamil. So um, it was different. It was just a different time where, and kids were kinder. I think at that time. I mean, I don't remember being bullied that much. I mean, it was the early part where there'll be somebody who'll be kind of the tough guy, the boss of the school or whatever, wants to show you who's the man, who's the boss, and you just have to work your way around that.
Wow. And then, Amit, being an only kid, how was that?
And Sanjay was, I didn't know any better. It was lonely, but my parents, we were close, play cards in the evenings and do stuff together. And I was mostly with books, I read a lot and I was in sports. So like I'd come back from school and, go right to some after school, like basketball. And when there were no kids, I'd play with the Javans, right? Like, I mean, I would play hockey with people like 20 years older or 10 years older than me, young Javans, and like learned how to get better, right? And or go for a swim and meet people there and played squash and stuff like that, where you go. There's usually a person there called a marker, and that if there's no one there, you play with the marker, and so it was lonely. I mean, during the school year, if it wasn't the school year, we'd go back to Lucknow, where both my parents are from, and we had an extended family there, my mom's side, and this massive house, and all the cousins would come, and it was just a remarkable experience. And I remember it pretty vividly. Speaking on the sleeping. Well, there's so many kids, right? There's no rooms, so you sleep on the terrace, and it's that's the only place that's cool enough that you can get some sleep and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I mean, I'd say part of it was not knowing better. Part of it was a little lonely, but I had sports and books and my family, my immediate family with me, and like during holidays, there'd be extended family. So that family's been the core of most of my upbringing.
So Lucknow was home, really, if you were to call a base
Lucknow,
camp.
both,
Base
yes,
camp.
exactly. Yeah, base camp was Lucknow. Yeah.
Wow. Grandparents?
Yeah, grandparents, my grandparents used to live, like my dad is four brothers and a sister, and they would rotate. So, and they wouldn't live together. They'd live independently. So it's sort of weird, but that's just how families are sometimes. So I remember like my grandma in Kanpur, my grandma was with us, and, I was her help. And so I used to help her through, you know, her whatever she needed kind of thing. And then in other places, my grandfather who used to be there, and they were both. My grandma was like super religious, and like my grandfather was like super intellectual, not religious at all, and falling like he was a principal of a college, and so he was very much into studies and like learning and paper. Like he'd get the paper first, and that kind of thing, and kind of a stern character. Um, so yeah, but I grew up with them around, whether even if they didn't really make up like big part of the social, like they were always there, you go and give them dinner for a while, right? And then sit with them, have a conversation. And just like it is for, I'm sure, many other families.
Close to grandparents, or we didn't have much interaction as much?
I had some, but my dad is the youngest of five siblings. So they were much older than me. Yeah. So, but, I remember my grandma she was religious, like I said, and used to, just teach me things about religion. And I used to sit with her and she'd have these books and she would write, Ram, like repeatedly, like just like books upon books filled with that. And so that had a pretty early influence on my dad's very religious also. So, religion and, spirituality have been a big part of our family's, upbringing. So.
Oh, that's great. So, when you were going from different schools, made any friends that kind of any close friends during that process?
No, not necessarily when you go from school to school. It's hard, like at that age, to stay connected. And this is before, like I said, there was, the tools and that kind of thing. When I went to boarding school is where I made some of my closest friends because we lived together for 4 years in high school and still in touch with them, and, friends with them, meet them, that kind of thing.
No, so that's pretty interesting. And any subjects you gravitated towards while you were pre high school?
You know, I was, uh, so I was usually, in the top of the class. And it was like, that's the thing. It was like my dad, my grandfather, my dad was like gold medalist. And that's all I heard, right? Everybody gets the best marks. So you're like, dude, I better get good marks or
No,
whatever.
no choices here,
And no
man.
choice. Yeah. And you're the only child. So like all your parents, like focus comes to you, that kind of thing. Um, I was always keen on, I was reasonably good at most subjects, but math and physics were the ones that I gravitated to generally.
Uh, was mom or dad helping at all with the homework?
Early on, it was my dad, but then like, it's just like I said, "Nah, I'll do it. I got it." Yeah, I was pretty self motivated, and I would put in a ton of work to just learn the subject matter, understand it deeply. So.
Tell us a little bit about your mom. I've spoken about your dad. Want to know a little bit about mom.
Yeah, so mom was, was this like intense and like go-getter type person, who kind of had a big influence on me. I remember telling, I mean, can I say in Hindi? Like, bade, bade ban ke kuch banna, be somebody when you grow up, become somebody, and she'd have these one-liners. It's like, you know, money is like vitamin M or something because we didn't really have a lot of money, so that was a big motivator for her. And and then she was also like, do kind things, good things for people, try and help somebody, that kind of stuff. So um, he was also somebody who had a lot of aspirations. My dad is very low key and balanced and, big meditator, that kind of thing. My mom was all about, she was social and like world revolved around her family and friends and going out and like having fun and seeing places and trying things. She'd be enrolling in a course a week, like try something new and read books and I take a lot of that from her actually. Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I try a lot of things. I do a lot of things. I have big appetite for experiences and so on.
So she had a lot of ambitions for you.
She did. She had ambitions for me. She had ambitions for herself. She started a business after like in her 50s, like making cushions from scratch, cushion covers with silk. She had sort of learned that craft and found a tailor. Then there was this store in Delhi called Santushti, which is a boutique art store. She'd take a bus and like take it. Like my dad wouldn't take her for some reason. I don't know why. But, like she'd go by herself and take care of stuff, and then she like learned how to do flower arrangement, ikebana, Japanese style of art. And then she used to give, like, go to various functions, Air Force functions, and do the different arrangements for people. So yeah, she had a lot of ambition and passion for life.
No, that's fantastic. Japanese flower arrangements and cushion, uh, and that too in Delhi, maybe in Hoskas or
And she
something
was
like.
a great painter. Painted, like, oh yeah, she's a great painter. She learned how to paint herself and made paintings that still hang on the walls of her house.
Wow, a lot of socializing happening at that time.
Yeah, so culture very much in the Air Force, and our family in general is social. We interact a lot with our family members and during holidays, and then usually during a week you go to someone's house in the camp, because that's who you have as your sort of folks, away from civilization in some cases. So you go and socialize as a club, you socialize there, go out for dinner there, play sports and that kind of thing. So yeah, very much a social, was a very social experience.
Going to the mess, which is how a lot of things. So people who don't know, mess is a big thing in for the armed forces. So, but that's fantastic. So then, at what point, you went from different places? How was it decided that you're going to go to this Air Force? This was a boarding school, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I had gone to that school. Yeah, it was my parents. I had gone to the Air Force school when we were in Delhi right before that. So for 3, 4 years.
But you were a day scholar there, right?
I was day scholar there. Yeah. Uh-huh. And then I came to Kalaikunda, and which is right outside Kharagpur. And it was an Air Force base. They used to have hunters and MiGs at that base, and close distance to China and so on. And you know, I remember this day, like the hotshot, like Air Force, these young pilots, 18, 19 years old. And I was they were Top Guns, man. And I used to go into their locker room, put on the thing. I never went up there. I wasn't allowed, but I sat in many of these fighters and I just got that experience. Like, wow, this is amazing. And, in eighth grade, this was eighth grade in Kalaikunda, I was there for seventh and eighth. And at that time, like, I was getting like 100% marks on virtually everything, and there was no competition. And it felt like to my parents that the curriculum wasn't really pushing me to be my best. And they made the call to put me back in Air Force school in Delhi, in boarding school. And um, I mean, I was partially excited, but quite nervous about going there. But yeah, it was their call.
To send you there, uh, because you didn't have a rigorous curriculum. And this was what, in ninth grade that you joined?
This is ninth. Yeah, went back in ninth. Yeah,
And this time you were in boarding, right?
4 years in boarding school. Yeah,
Uh, Tough in the beginning because can be pretty tough, with especially in the Air Force boarding school and especially Air Force kids, man.
yeah. It was tough. I mean, there was some ragging, and that's how you get to know people. Like, you're nervous, and you're in a cohort of like 8, 7 new kids. Some of them have been in the boarding school well before you, so they have their relationships and stuff. So, homesick for a few weeks, but that was it. Very quickly you get into the flow, and the ragging is there to make introduce you to everybody, really. And it wasn't like super bad. It was like, some beatings and like at night, or like wake up and like send you to go get water from somewhere, and you know go clean the polish the shoes of the seniors and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's like pretty basic stuff. Nothing too bad.
Yeah. So, but then did you start warming up, making friends out there?
Oh yeah, the 8 of us that were in the dorm together became like super close, and yeah, became did a lot, did everything together, hung out together, got to become really close friends, and still are.
From different parts of the country, or
Yeah, different parts. Yeah. There were different parts of the country: Haryana, Meerut. Obviously, I was from Delhi. I had a friend, like who came with me from Kalaikunda. Um, yeah, so yeah, but my sort of north folks, yeah, on the north side of India.
So you started that eight became like a family in a way for you.
Yeah, they became, yeah, we did all just great. I mean, just stuff that like it's pretty nuts. I mean, stealing food and cutting classes and going to movies and things that I still remember quite fondly.
Yes, yes. Um, so you how are the studies? Were they a little more rigorous than Kalaikonda?
Rigorous for sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the reason they selected it because it's a rigorous school. There's a lot of discipline, focus, and high quality of studies.
CBSE?
Yes, yes, yeah.
And so how were you? You were killing it in Kalaikonda. Did you come down to earth?
So I was doing pretty well when I was there as a day scholar, and then for till ninth grade, did okay, and then I started to just like kind of veer off into lots of extracurricular activities, I'd say. I mean, a lot of sports. So I played basketball, played hockey, because you're in boarding school, you get to do everything, right? And I got obsessed with basketball. Like I was playing it like night and day. And I didn't make the team initially, but like I was better than most of the folks in the team. And then they had tryouts and I kind of blew past most of the other people. So they had to pick me. and and then, boarding school life has its own culture, the sort of the hanging out with people and the inter-house rivalries, that stuff gets to be intense and the friendships that you make and whatever somebody's going through. So that became more of my life. So yeah, grade slipped in 10th grade. By 11th grade, I was like middle of the pack. And then I also like didn't go to school for a few weeks, for a few months. I was like playing table tennis like around the clock. Got obsessed with table tennis and Donkey Kong. I was like, yeah, doing things that really I would not recommend your listeners, kids to do. But I did them. And I had to I had to leave boarding school for 6 months. My mom came down from Alvara. No, no, no. I self tapped out and said like I'm not going to do well in my board exams, and I need to kind of now focus. So in 12th grade, she came down, and we had this small room. It was tiny, tiny, above a garage, basically, with and she stayed there, and I studied like 18, 20 hours a day to make up for years of neglect.
We call it the boot camp of Indian studying.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Your board exam is whatever. Was it in March? I think so. I think in October, I told her like, "Hey, I gotta do this." So she came down, and she
Was
lived
she
in
disappointed?
Oscars. And no, no, she was happy that at least I was like putting in the work. Finally, because they saw the grades slipping, and like, what's going on? I was like,
So you went to house class. So you moved out of the boarding to
boarding
house
school.
class.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. Boarding school was very like there was too many distractions for me. So
And that's a topic for another podcast, the distractions. But were you still in school or did you just
yeah, still in school. I would go occasionally, but I was pretty much like I have the curriculum. I'm gonna just grind it out. So I just like just taught myself and worked around the clock pretty much in 12th grade. Yeah, do for the board exams. Yeah.
So what was the result of this 6 month penance that you did, banwas? We call it 6 months banwas.
I topped the school. I was the first, and I came out of nowhere. Nobody expected. Yeah, exactly.
Well, our listeners should know that is not generally how it should be done, but or maybe that's how it should be done. I don't know, man. Uh, cruise, and then do a 6 month crash course and come first in school.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, I don't think so. So you came first in school, and then what were you thinking? What am I going to do now?
So I was pretty much like, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'd call myself like this. I'm very curious about things I want to do. I'm like right now I'm preparing for triathlon. So I've like learned everything about triathlons and I'm doing 4 days a week of training. So I pretty into it. But like general school wasn't that interesting. Like, like why do I need organic chemistry? Like I'm not going to use any of it. So I, had kind of those. I still believe that. Like I think parts of school are amazing, like the social part and the things you want to do. Other parts are just useless, frankly. And so I felt that way even then. And so by then I was so exhausted. I gave my IIT thing and then like got some really poor rank, like 1500 or something. So it wasn't great. I got IIT BHU, uh, yeah, some ceramic engineering, but I had good grades. So I got directly at those days, Delhi College of Engineering would take you based on the board marks directly. And so like I actually didn't get in the first list or the second list, because I had to go to DU I went to Hindu. I had to walk on since I didn't have any like school entry. I'm like, damn, I thought I'd get in. I didn't like the IIT option. Uh, and so I walked up to the chemistry and like physics professor. My physics was the best thing. Like I need admission, and the admissions were closed. They're like, "What are you doing, man?" I don't know. I just I thought I'd get in these other things. I didn't. I'd like to get into Hindu. And so they opened it up for me. And like I filled out the form and I got in and pretty much played basketball because I was kind of waiting for the DCE thing to come in. And I remember this day my mom would go there once a week. What the hell is going on? Can my son get into DCE? And finally on the third list I got in and then I went to DC for 4 years.
But how was that experience? Tell us a little bit.
No, honestly, it wasn't that great. I mean, like, nah, I was really into social stuff and like I had built this like community of people and I like social stuff and sports made up more of my life than education did. And so I wanted to prioritize those things. So I played for the team. I ran track and those kinds of things in college. And, I didn't really enjoy the classes. I did electrical. So like power engineering just didn't motivate me. I did it because like that's what you do, I guess. But not my like favorite, not my favorite thing, It's like a lot of great people there. And I like my roommate in masters was a friend of mine from there. We weren't friends at that time, but we became friends later. He's one of my closest friends now. But it was the social equation. There was a lot of very like cerebral people, call them geeks as a word, but I mean that in a positive sense, by the way. Like geeks will rule the world. But I was like in a different mind space. I was into party, had a motorcycle. I had a bet with my dad that if I got 90% or higher, he'd buy me a motorcycle. And I did. And no, I had a Yamaha 100. Yeah, so I was into that, I was reading a lot, reading like non-school stuff, like fiction, non-fiction, playing squash for the team and like outside and my parents came back to Delhi at that time. So I was staying home, went to the Holocaust Club, which is the club that all the services people use. So I used to play squash like 2-3 hours a day and like swim and hang out with people. And it was a social time more than it was a school. I felt like I've already done all this. Like I worked for 6 months. I'm done with that. And then look, it was reasonable marks and all that I got, but it wasn't something that I would say like, oh my God, this is the highlight of my life or anything like that.
It wasn't, huh? It didn't challenge you or it didn't interest you?
It didn't. It was interest. It was interest. I wasn't interested.
So then you didn't think of just skipping, changing, or anything like that?
You're in it. You don't know any better. You're like, I need to do something with my life. An engineering degree is a good thing. I was pretty sure I'll do my master's where I'll do something, different. And yeah.
So then, as you are getting close to graduation, what was going on at that time? Mom and dad, any pressure from mom and dad? Hey, what will you do? You got to become a big. You got to be a big man, and vitamin M is very important, Amit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that I would be going to the United States. I had that. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Well, two reasons. One is I had this fascination, from movies. Like I was a big Star Wars fan, and I loved English music. And friend of mine, he in boarding school, his parents were posted abroad, and they'd send like tinned meat, and like we would make it up into a fry. I'm like, oh, this is so, and Toblerones and yeah, that kind of thing. I'm like, man, this is cool stuff. And another thing is like I felt like I would have more opportunity here, I guess, here. Um, but like just the grind of the competition and like too many people competing for too few roles wasn't ideal for success. Like you could still succeed, but so those were some of the reasons. And I had family members who had been to the US. So I'd heard my dad's older brother came for his master's in Washington. And so I had that sort of view of the world, right? Like that is possible, right? Because you need exemplars to be able to even imagine a world like that. I had exemplars, and so those were some of the reasons.
What about the music? What kind of music were you impressed from the US? Rock.
Classic rock, yeah. Dire Straits and Pink Floyd and Billy Joel, Eric Clapton, the people of that genre. I was into Bruce, I was into Elvis, I was into, so many great bands. The Police. There was this, the World Hunger tour that came through India. I was like in the front row, cheering, and it was great, great experience.
That's fantastic. So you knew that that's a destination, so to speak, for you. So what did you start doing towards that? Let's say when you were coming close to graduation.
At that time, this is 1988, okay, and so like, how do you do one of these things? You ask people, you go to the American embassy, there's a institute there, it like has books. You read about it, you talk to people who might be coming back from the US, like, hey, what was that like? Which school are you in? What should I do? You heard about a few MIT and Harvard and things like that. And and so, I had somebody 1 year senior who had gone to the US. So I relied on him to say, what should I do? Where should I apply? What is this process like? Oh, you have to take an SAT exam. Then you have to prove that you know English, which is this TOEFL and stuff. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. So you sat, and gave the SAT, you gave the TOEFL, get your grades back, and then you talk to your friends. You go to this institute and like try and look at this, you know, top engineering schools list. And like, but I didn't want to. I knew I didn't want to go to do engineering because I already had that experience. And I wanted to do maybe an MBA, but like we didn't have any money. So I'm like, my parents can't afford it. They don't give me loan at that time. So I did like, what is the closest is like industrial and management. So I will take that degree and do more management, and that'll be my entry into business. And so that was my strategy. And so I applied to just that program in 4 or 5 places. Like these were expensive, $20 to apply at that time was like a fortune, right? To send your transcripts and all of that and all these stamps. And, I got, you know, like three, three places got like Alabama, Tuscaloosa, Roll Tide. RPI was my top choice, and I got rejected from all the others. So like RPI was the place. And that's where I went.
Wow, that's fantastic. One question before we talk about RPI. No interest in following dad in the services at all? No pressure?
I originally had interest to be a fighter pilot
Uh-huh.
and, fly planes and live fast and all of that
Yeah,
and have a great life because I saw that life being pretty awesome. But my dad dissuaded me from it. He's like, I don't think you're going to like it. I think you're meant for something else. You're meant for, you know, bigger things in his words. And um, I was torn, but then I pretty quickly pivoted with his sort of help to doing something else, not efforts.
So you came to RPI. So when you came here, uh, how was it? Was it the climate, the whole environment? This was the first time you were coming to the US, pre-internet. Uh, no strong winter jackets, I presume.
Oh boy, so I come into this is Troy, New York, upstate New York, and I thought it was in New York City or somewhere. I didn't know any different. And it's a small town, and it's like an old town, a mill town, sort of slightly dilapidated and cold. I mean, initially in August when we landed, it was beautiful, and then pretty quickly it turned cold. And I was like, yeah, you have to buy goose down jackets, and then you don't have any cars, so you have to walk to school, and it's cold as hell. You're not used to this, and so yeah, you learn a lot of things from that experience. Uh, it was, and I was in a lab, so there was people helping me. I was doing a sort of a lab assistantship type, research. And so you make friends pretty quickly. It's pretty international. So that part was good. But yeah, learning how to cook by yourself. I lived with this, my friend Vishal, who was, I knew from Delhi College of Engineering. We became roommates and then very close friends. And, taking turns cleaning house and cooking. And as an Indian community, you pretty quickly plug into the Indianness there. And before you know it, there's an Indian association in the school. And I ended up being part of their functions, and like I was the host and MC of many of their shows, and that's how I got to meet so many people.
So going from having a lot of orderlies to being an orderly yourself in a way. Well, people who understand defense will understand the joke here, but anyway, that's a whole different story. But but how was the education like there?
Pretty good. It was nice. It was, it was easy. I will find U.S. education compared to Indian fairly easy. People very generous with their time. Professors are very available compared to in India. Open book. I didn't understand the concept. Like you mean I can just answer it? Look at the book and answer this question. It's so easy. And so yeah, it was I learned, I mean, I did some software programming. In those days it was still early days of, computer science and so on. And so learned some skills there, programmed on like a big mainframe, but then also on, Apple had just come out with its Mac, small little minis, and so floppy disks and that stuff. And so yeah, that I learned that skill there, and did a couple of classes on organizational design and management and stuff. Got some stuff out of that. So yeah, it was a but I finished it in a year and a half, 6 months before. So crammed it all in. So
So so then you graduated in a year and a half. So what was the mission then? Vitamin M?
get a job, try and stay in the country, right? No, it wasn't my vitamin and Sanjay. At that stage, it's survival. Like you got to stay in the country. For that, you need a job. You got to, and like it was in 1990 and 91 was when the recession came with the Bush senior. So there weren't really that many jobs. So it was like, how do I get one of those?
Yeah. So how did you get one of those?
Applied to a million places, got rejected from almost all of them. I had done one project on database design in computer science, and I'd written, some stuff. It was, I'd done a project on like expert systems. Yeah, yeah, Oracle. I was using Oracle actually. Yeah, I was Oracle, and I was doing some stuff with like training expert systems, just the precursor to AI. Like it trains itself after a while. And so, yeah, sure. Yeah. And applied it to material science. So, I had some skills, but honestly, not great. Okay. It was pretty basic, raw skills. And, somebody I'd applied, Oracle had come on campus and I'd applied there. And they were a young company at that time. And they were recruiting for a software programmer role. out of Vermont, actually. There was a team in Vermont, Burlington, Vermont. And so I got an interview there, and, they asked me like how good my skills were. And this is before, and they didn't really give me a test, which is a mistake on their part because I'm like, hey, my skills are great. Because I'm like, just take my word for it. And our social skills were good. So you're like, this is a good guy. But I didn't really know C. I just dabbled a little bit in it. And so I did get that offer. It was, I remember like at that time, it was so much money, and it was modest amount in these days, but felt like I was like the top of the world, just first of all, got a job and, all, money. And then, that I could afford an apartment on my own and, get my parents tickets to come visit me and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So you moved to Vermont then, Amit?
I moved to Vermont, yeah, for a year and lived there. Beautiful place. And then they moved. The team had to consolidate with the Boston office, and then I spent the next 20 years in Boston. Almost all of it, yeah, with Oracle, still with Oracle, but in different jobs, no longer a software programmer because I just very quickly realized like sitting by yourself and writing code wasn't for me. And I want to be out there and meet people and so yeah, I found my way into the sales side of things. First pre-sales and then sales.
Wow. But that's a transition, right? A lot of people don't make that transition from coding to sales.
Yeah, yeah. It was, like accidents happen in life. I mean, like we were sharing a floor with the sales teams, and they would always have issues with their demo setup. And I'd be helping them. And occasionally I would present, like, hey, this is what we're working on to customers. And the person running that team, the Boston office, took a liking to me, say, hey, you're really good in front of customers. If you ever, want to do something, you should, talk to us. So I'm like, oh. And then they moved the team, the engineering team back to California. And I didn't want to move to California at that time. I was dating this girl, who's my wife now. And I said, I have a good thing going. Like, I don't know how long distance would be. So I chose then at that time to take him up on this offer and move to a sort of a technical sales role, which I didn't know what that meant, frankly. I had a little glimpse of that experience just presenting to people. I'm like, I'm good at that part of it. And so but then you learn, you go through boot camp and, you go learn it. You learn watching people and, on the job training pretty much like, hey, just, they pretty much throw you in and you go figure it out. So.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So then you spent you in several roles in Oracle and in Boston, and mom and dad came to visit also.
Oh yeah, every year. Yeah, every year for a long time. They'd come, we'd go travel. I take them to conferences, obviously. So yeah, we were very close. And so that's been a routine right since then. Like my parents and now my dad, they come every year.
That's fantastic. So then you moved from Oracle to where did you move? Google. What was the yeah? What was the transition?
Yeah. So,
Why?
I'd been at Oracle for almost 20 years. I'd done 4 or 5 roles that, went from pre-sales to sales, then to sales management, and then to an executive role. I almost left Oracle in 99 and started my own business, but then it crashed right in 2000. So I kind of lost my nerve and then took a role in like corporate strategy / integration. Oracle had just started buying companies. So I worked on those projects and like that was very interesting. Like I'm generally get bored with things and I want to try new things. So that was a new thing and integrating these companies into Oracle and delivering growth and revenue from that. Meaningful change from the prior role. But by 2007, 8, I was kind of tired of being in one place. I felt like I need to do something else. You know how it is. And at that time, S3 and like, Amazon just released that, and I saw some colleagues using it for doing demos and stuff. And man, I wanted it. I thought cloud is going to be really an important technology in the future. Oracle was not going down the path of cloud, and I felt like I needed to change. And then Google came a knocking. They wanted somebody to help bring them into the enterprise world. They weren't an enterprise company; they were a search company. And so I took that chance. It was a big move, moving three young kids from East Coast to the West Coast, uprooting your family, moving away from friends, and all of that. Very difficult choice. But my wife was the anchor and like the wind, beneath my wings to give me confidence that we'll be fine. And so made that move and started that job. And like, soon enough, I was running sales for that team, the enterprise team. And then Larry became CEO, and things changed. And my boss, who was the president of that time, ended up leaving the company. And I was the guy. So then suddenly I was thrust into the role of, president of Google Enterprise. And yeah, it's one of those things.
So the lesson is you should sometimes take chances or maybe listen to your wife.
Both things. Always listen to your wife. And actually, one thing, Sanjay, always take chances. I think that's what immigrants do by coming here. And I think young people, I do a lot of mentorship with young people. Like, you should take risks earlier on than you think. It'll all work out. And I wish I'd done it earlier, but anyway, I did it. I took that chance, and yeah, it paid off.
Yeah, because 20 years is a long time because your roots, your friends, your kids' education, everything is in one place. But you did it. And then you became president of Google. Circumstances, your talent, the guy moved, Larry moved out. And so you continued in Google and then you left Google.
The That job was like amazing. So you're president of Google. I introduced Google Cloud to the world. That was a project we called that became Google Cloud from Google Enterprise. Rebranded it, and I had the best time. I was doing product management, engineering, sales, operations. So it was a full, but it was a small division inside Mother Google, right? So from that perspective, um, it was, when I was leaving, I think it was like 5 billion in revenue. It's three times that amount now. And so got an opportunity to learn a lot, learn from the Google culture, learn about innovation, and how to collaborate across lots of teams, and how to lead large teams where you're delivering on a mission and under difficult circumstances. A lot of competition from Amazon and Azure, and of course, difficult to get resources inside Google. So you're fighting a multi-front battle. So those days are just super intense, like working nonstop, flying around the world, trying to promote both Google but also cloud. This is early days of cloud, right? This is not a fact that it would become the dominant architecture for technology service delivery. But in those days, it was like you're trying to meet CIOs and convince them, hey, give us a chance. And we can do these things and so on. Obviously, now it's quite different. And yeah, then 10 years there, I actually worked towards the end of it on some very interesting project on virtual and augmented reality, like glasses, and early, a little ahead of its time, but I learned a lot from that too. Google Glass, Daydream, which was the virtual reality project, and then Google Lens, which is used for understanding of the world. So, but just interesting technology, very futuristic, a lot of like difficult challenges to solve. But then, I was done with, 10 years, 8, 9 years there. It's good enough time. And it's time to do something else. And then join Palo Alto Networks, which is where I am now.
So this is again a lesson, a little bit for our listeners. You're not a software engineer per se, are you?
I was, but I'm not anymore.
Okay. Because people who are wondering, hey, not a software engineer, how did he get into a leadership role? What would be your message towards them?
So look, I visualized being a president CEO when I was 21 years old. I knew that that was my path. Yeah, I closed my eyes. I could see myself doing that. And the life trajectory just led me there. And like, obviously your hard work, you have to be lucky, you have to have the right people around you. You have to take risk. So that's what I wanted. I truly wanted to be that. Um, so, you know, what does it take? I mean, first of all, you know, I had to play to my strengths, which are communication, presence, persuasion, leadership. Those are my skill sets, business. So it wasn't software engineering. But I still, to this day, I mean, I think like a software engineer, deep in product thinking, design, tech. I still read a lot of technology, like white papers and newsletters. Like right now, I have like 8 AI based newsletters I read every day, and like white papers that come out. And when I'm talking to product managers at Palo Alto Networks or at Google at that time, I'd go pretty deep in the tech. Like, why did you make certain decisions and so on and so forth? And software engineering and engineering in general gives you that ability, even though you may not be doing it every day, to think logically, have structure, be able to abstract that into ideas. Um, and along the way, Sanjay, I put a lot of investment in my career. I mean, learning new skills, learning how to present, selling, marketing. And I was at Google, like product management, like what does that look like? So rounded all of that out by doing either in the context of that job or taking a sideways role, like when I was at Oracle, learning how to integrate companies that you've purchased. That's not a skill that most people have. And then some things you learn on the job, like, I used to be much more authoritative, directive in my style, and then learned that there are other ways to do it, and went to classes for it, like either read books or went to a training program on leadership, for example. And so you learn all those skills along the way that give you the baseline to become an executive or a CEO.
So I think one of the messages you're trying to tell our listeners is self-learning is very, very critical. True?
I think all learning is self learning. Even if you're in school, like how much effort you put in one subject is what makes the difference. And today, learning is virtually, free on Coursera or YouTube. You can learn pretty much anything. It's just desire and interest. And, I've sort of been somebody who has a lot of curiosity. So if I get interested in something, I will like just like immerse myself in that and like just absorb and learn it and so on. And I think that's advice I definitely give younger people.
Curiosity and self-learning. That's very important. One thing you touched on, Amit, and this is something we ask all our guests, is the role of mentors. Now they come in many different shapes and sizes, informal, formal. Have there been some kind of a mentor in or mentors across your journey in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've been so privileged, Sanjay, that I've worked with amazing people. At Oracle, I had several mentors, took me under their wing when I didn't know how anything about sales. Like, "Oh, what is that? How do I do it?" And they showed me the ropes. And then, when I moved to, um, Google, same thing, right? The culture there is very much a mentorship and collaboration culture, and not even just people who you work for, people who you work alongside. Like Sundar was a great mentor. He had great design thinking, was a good friend. I learned a lot from, and you don't have to be formally mentored. You can just observe people in their natural habitat and like their way of being or the way of thinking, the way they write or the way they present. And you can be mentored by that experience. So I've always sort of, admired so many people and their skills and, tried to sort of incorporate that into my own knowledge base.
That's fantastic for especially our young listeners. Uh, Amit, we have kind of painted a very, at least in my mind, a very vivid image of a very social, curious young man. What is one of your favorite childhood memories, if you were to pick one? I'm sure there are many.
Yeah, I mean, one is this like, being in a big house 3-story with all the cousins, sitting in a kitchen where fresh pulkas are being made and you're like in a row and like just eating food together, that communal feeling. Another one would be like going from one um, posting to another in a train with all your luggage in one place and trying to quickly get off that train before it like departs because it's you, your mom, and your dad, and you're engaging with so many people in the train and playing cards and like, this is before the day of like, food was easily available. So at different stations, friends would bring you a tiffin so you have food for the next, because these are 4-day journeys, right? These take a long time. So,
Now, train journeys are incredible memories. So great memories. Uh, Amit, obviously you've come a tremendous amount, from uh, the different places to Air Force School to now to California. You still obviously you're learning. You're getting ready for your triathlon, but let's just take you to the future a little bit. And it's hard to predict, but where do you think your journey is going to go in the future?
I'm trying to answer that question for myself. Look, I feel like, I love California. I think that keeps me there. More like about the work I want to do. It's like, I just started, I built a course on, for young people that I'm trialing at Palo Alto Networks on how to communicate and present and build your capability of communicating to a large group of people. And I feel like that's a skill I've learned over time. And so I just um, just did the first class, and I have 7 more that I plan to do. And I'm mentoring these kids. There's about 30 in this cohort. And so, giving back to people. We have a big philanthropy. I do a lot of philanthropy with my personal kind of resources. Do a lot of investments with young entrepreneurs building companies. I'm a board of a few of them. I'm still working at Palo Alto Networks, so I have that. So it's a pretty full life. And then I have a very important daily spiritual practice on meditation, which I don't miss. I try not to miss it any day because every day I can do that is a great day. So yeah, and I'm doing the triathlon. So it's a lot. There's a lot going on in my life. Yeah.
Lot going on. So there's mentorship, investments, philanthropy, spirituality. Wow, you got a full plate, and then triathlon. Let's not mix that. So we've taken you to the future. I'm going to just take you quickly to the past briefly. Imagine this is me, Amit, who's just come out of Delhi Engineering College. Just if you had to give him one or two pearls of wisdom like your mom used to give, if you were to give that to me, what would be the one or two pearls of wisdom?
Amit, don't be so intense. Try to have some fun along the way. Uh, I do have fun. I do love to have fun. Yeah. Smell the roses.
Yeah, smell the rose. No, but that's great to know. Amit, if you were to pick two or three key inflection points in your life, because it's very important for our listeners to know, because they are faced with inflection points. Which ones were you, if you were to pick one or two or three?
Yeah, I think we've talked about some obvious ones, but I'll tell you, this move from software engineering to business was one where it was like I knew in my heart it was a safe thing, keep staying there or like move there. And I usually believe things intuitively. It'll come to you. And it came to me and I made that move even though I had no business going into business, right? Like I had no skill there. Another one was this, looking at the future, the cloud might be a future. And I know it's a big risk. And taking risks is like the biggest part like of things. Like take the risk, and even though it's a huge cost you pay, but over time it works out. That was another inflection point. And I think now is in another inflection point right now where, I'm like, look, I was president of Palo Alto Networks. I'd been president of Google Cloud. I'd done both things. I mean, big. I don't I need to prove that part to myself. But I'm curious about a lot of other things, and both my personal spiritual growth, my physical growth, and my commitment to the community and my family. And for that, I need time. So I gave up all those responsibilities. We have a great new president who's doing a good job. So I can now focus on at work more strategic things and then find time to do all these other things I'm describing, because you can't do that if you don't have a calendar that enables that. Right. And that was a third inflection point, which, at different stages you make these choices.
That's pretty cool. Going from software to business, figuring out the cloud will be a big thing, and then obviously now focusing on some other things and giving up. Very hard for people to give up big titles and big roles, which you did. So that's fantastic. Uh, we have last two rapid fire questions by one or two or three sentences. Your definition of Indianness. You kind of have alluded to it, but we want to hear it from.
Indianness is like just the feeling you get when you meet people. It's like, it's really love and connection. That's the thing I see. Like whenever I see people, I hate to be that. Like it's just, I love seeing Indian people. I love seeing Indian people do well. There's so many here in Silicon Valley and all around the world, and it makes me happy. Happiness.
Good. That's a fantastic seeing other Indians do well. And that's why we are building a community, Amit, and we'd love for you to be part of that, the Indianness community. Amit, thank you so very much for being so open, so honest, and giving us a peek into 6 months of crash courses and other things, etc. So really look forward to maybe continuing the conversation, also inspiring so many others. So thank you, Amit. Really appreciate it.